See if that's working. Hello, hello. It looks like it's recording. Okay. So the question was asked: was that short film made in Maya? I think so. It was made in more than likely one of three software packages. There are three main 3D animation production packages in sort of the industry right now. There's Autodesk Maya, which is what we're using. Autodesk is the company that owns that software package. There's Autodesk 3D Studio Max. Autodesk is still the company that owns the software package. Another company used to own it. Autodesk bought it, so now they own both of them. Slowly, 3ds Max is sort of dwindling, like fewer and fewer people are using it, and more people are using Maya. And then there's a third one that was really popular for a long time called Softimage, also owned by Autodesk. Autodesk officially killed it like 2 years ago. They basically said, they bought all three of them and said, we don't need all three of them, we're just going to kill one. So basically they bought their competition and killed one. Business, right? Like I'm not in business. Apparently that's a good way to run a business. Maybe, I don't know. There are a couple of other software packages that do parts of the 3D asset process, right? But Maya does the entire pipeline in some form or another. It is a full asset creation package, right? We can do modeling, we can do lighting and rendering, we can do texturing, we can do materials, we can do animation, we can do rigging, we can do effects. The only two things you really can't do well in Maya, you can't draw in it because it's not really a 2D package, although there's a couple of tools that'll let you kind of draw in it. And you can't really edit a full video together. You can't take images that you've rendered out and put those back together. We usually use Premiere for that. So I'll show you some very basic stuff in Premiere, but you're going to get a lot of, the packages that would be used for those two things would be Photoshop for drawing, right, digital drawing, and Premiere, both owned by Adobe, for editing video together. You'll get some experience in Photoshop in the Principles of Visualization class. You'll get some experience in Premiere in the Principles of Visual Effects class. I will touch on both of them very, very slightly, mainly Premiere. So there's other asset creation programs that only do single things, right? So ZBrush is a digital sculpting program. So it's a way of modeling. The way we'll model inside of Maya is called box modeling, which means we kind of take some primitive objects and warp those until we get them into the shape that we want them to be in. ZBrush is like takes a virtual blob of clay and lets you sculpt on it, right? And then you can do whatever you want to with it after that. ZBrush is much more heavy though. Like the model you get out of ZBrush may be millions of polygons versus the thousands that you actually need, right? So that's much further down the road. There's also specific programs for texturing and materials. There's one that we use here called Substance Designer, which is, Substance Designer and Substance Painter are programs in which you can take your model into that program and pretty much paint textures all over it, right? And so you can do a little bit of that in Maya. Substance is a program that is specifically made to do that. Usually Maya is where everything comes back to though, right? Like you can't animate in ZBrush, so eventually you're going to put your model back into Maya to animate it, right? You can't animate or render really out of Substance, so you're going to put it back into Maya. Maya is sort of the home program, right? And so although you may have to go outside of it to do some stuff, it is like this foundational software package, an asset creation software that can kind of cover the whole spectrum. I feel like it's important to point out to you that you don't have to know the whole spectrum to get a job in this. You don't have to be able to master Maya. You have to be able to master one of the things you can do in Maya, right? I'm not good at lighting and rendering. but I get paid professionally to be an animator in Maya, right? And so what Maya can do as a software versus what your job might be someday, like you may just use a certain menu set out of Maya and never touch the rest of it, right? Having said that, what I like to do is give you a foundation of all of it in this class with a little bit of a focus on animation, right? So we're going to sort of try to pay most attention to animation, but we're going to do some modeling, we're going to do some lighting and rendering, we're going to do some effects is animation as well. We're going to do some rigging, and just so you can get a sampler of everything that is sort of in the spectrum that can be done, and what it is you like, right? So I think that's the big thing for you to be thinking about while you're in this class. Like, you're not going to get teachers asking you this a lot, but what is the part you're enjoying the most? What is the part that, like, you go, ooh, I could do this for fun? Like, if I ask you to model, like, 3 objects, and before you know it, you've modeled 7 because you just enjoy it, well, that sounds like you like modeling. Like, if you're getting enjoyment out of doing that, wow, wouldn't it be awesome if somebody would pay you to do that, right? Like, that's that is the way to be looking at this. This is your sampler basket when you get to try out all these software packages. So I'm going to walk you through today. I'm going to walk you through the interface of Maya. Like, what are all these buttons? Like, what do I need to be paying attention to right now? Again, I'm going to record this on video. At the end of class, I'll stop the video. I'll upload that to YouTube. But before I do that, I'm going to give you your first exercise, okay? Which is really it's not a super complicated one. It's designed to get you into Maya and learning how to move around inside the program, right? Learning how to move about in there. Before I jump into that, I want to show you one thing. This is what the video is going to look like. I'm currently capturing it on the other screen. All of this area out in here is going to have what's on my desktop, right? And this little window up here is going to have me dancing around out here in front of the screen, right? That's because sometimes I forget that I'm not talking to a classroom. I'm also talking to a video, and I make hand gestures and stuff like this that actually have bearing on what I'm talking about, right? And so I tried to make me itty bitty, because dieting isn't working. So shrinking the screen, that's the closest I can get to it. And that is also how I'm getting the audio. So that means that when I'm up here, I'm going to be really loud. And when I'm over here, I'm going to be really quiet. I would suggest you probably watch this with headphones, right? That way you can crank it up and down and stuff like that. So, okay. So it's recording already. I'll just move this off the screen. So if you haven't figured out how to open Maya yet, it's just to go down here to our search bar. It's kind of cutting it off on the screen here a little bit, but down here to your little start menu, the window, and just start typing Maya, M-A-Y-A. Okay, so it's like the civilization, M-A-Y-A. So it's going to pop up the logo at the top up here. Sometimes people want to make a shortcut on your desktop. I think if you make a shortcut on your desktop, it'll stay there. I'm not 100% sure it'll allow you to, but if you do, some of the changes you make to your environment will stay on that computer. Sorry, I'm just kind of looking around the room. I noticed a couple people don't have computers. Are we over? Like, do we have too many people in the class? I know this one over here is not apparently working or something.
Yeah, neither is this one.
Neither is that one. Okay, yeah, I was going to say if you all need to, if you want to do that, like, so there's one up here that they can use, and if you all want to grab that one, and is there anybody else who's needing one too? So once you up here and grab that one, and if yours isn't working, can you just kind of look over his shoulder that way, and y'all can kind of take turns using the mouse. I think it's this one. Yeah, this one up here. Okay. So So once we get this open here, Autodesk Maya, we just got to click on it. Looks like a good percentage of you have already done this. We'll go ahead and let it open. It's going to start asking you some questions at the very beginning, and you're like, settle down, Maya, I don't know what's going on. Right? In most cases, when any software package asks you a question, we usually just have a tendency to hit okay, whatever, just to get past it, right? Like this one, can we use your data? Like this is the, I like how it doesn't give you an option to say no. Like, can we? Yes. So okay. And then the next question is going to ask you, and this is a little, well, I think. Okay, maybe not. Maybe they fixed that. Usually the first time you start Maya, there it is, you get this question. This is just asking, do you want to see the new features highlighted? It's also asking, do you always want to see this box when you first open Maya? Show this at startup. I would uncheck show this at startup just because when Maya crashes and you start it again, like for some reason loading this box takes it a second and it almost slows down how quickly Maya starts. So I usually leave this highlight what's new, and you'll see throughout your interface these little green boxes around stuff right here. That means that tool is new in this version of Maya. Okay? That may not, like, it's all new to you. But once you started using the software a little bit, that becomes handy. You're like, oh, I've not seen that before. I should explore that and see what that is and learn from that, right? So it's nice to go ahead and leave that highlighted. It's your call on whether you want to or not. I'm going to. Okay, so this is Maya. How many of you, anybody having any issues getting it open? Okay, so I know that there is a good chance a portion of you have already used Maya. Either you have downloaded a version of it at home and played with it there, or you've used it in another class. How many of you have used Maya in some form or another before? Okay. The question I get a lot is, can I download this at home? The answer is yes. You can install this on your personal computer, a student version of it. All you have to do is go, because I can never remember the website, I always just Google Maya student version, right? And it takes you to that website. All you have to do is subscribe to an account or log into the account using a valid student ID or a student email. So you're going to use your etsu.edu email. It'll send you this location. You can download a version of Maya to put on your home computer that is pretty much the same exact version here. The only difference is when you save a file in that version and you bring it here to open it, it's going to give you a little warning whenever you open that file that says, this was created in a student version of the software. Right? So that's not a problem unless you're ever trying to make money with it, right? It means you have a student license of it that you can use for learning. You can make whatever you want to. You can make student films with it. You can do whatever you want to, right? The second you start making money with Maya, you have to buy a license or a subscription. A license to Maya for, like an unlimited license for Maya, is somewhere in the neighborhood of $3,000. I use Maya for commercial work. I occasionally do contract work for game studios I work with. And one of the options they have is to get a subscription for it, so you pay for it by the month. A monthly subscription is about $200 a month. That's why you charge $40 an hour, right? Like and so it makes it worth it. It's not worth it to you yet. Just keep using the student version. So download that on your computer. You'll have some issues getting it downloaded because it's like 2 gigabytes or something like that. But once you get it, that'll give you some opportunity to mess around with this at home in your spare time. You don't always have to come to the lab to work. I encourage you to come to the lab to work because in this lab are going to be other people who are trying to figure this stuff out too, right? And you can look over them and be like, hey, how do I extrude again? And they may remember that it's Control E. Control E will extrude, right? So that's beneficial, but again, I'm recording the videos for that reason. All right. So there's a lot of people raised their hand that had used Maya before. I'm still going to teach today as if you haven't, because different people teach you this in different ways. You're going to learn something from it, even if you've been using it for years, right? The first thing to kind of look at is how the software is broken up, how this interface is broken up. We have this big empty gray area in the middle. This is your workspace. Okay? This is where you're going to be doing most of your work inside of Maya. This is also a fully interactive 3D environment. This is almost literally a video game you can navigate around in. It's just not a very fun video game, right? There's nothing in here. It is rendering in the same, like the things we see in here render in the same way that a video game renders stuff. It renders it through your GPU, through your graphics card, right? And so we'll have 3D objects in here that we can see lighting on and all of that and tumble around. It's just not going to look incredibly good in here. So this is our 3D workspace. We'll be able to navigate around in here. We're going to get to that in just a second. Looking at the rest of the interface, it's kind of broken up into 4 quadrants, right? There's this section across the top, there's a section across each side, and then there's a section across the bottom. Let's start with this section across the top, okay? All of this across the top is where everything is, okay? Literally, we see our menu up here, file, edit, create, select, modify. Like, that's a pretty long menu. Everything you can do in Maya, I've tested this before to try to find something you can't do in Maya. Every tool or every major action that you'll ever need to take is hidden somewhere in that menu, right? And that doesn't seem accurate considering, like, I mean, that's a lot of things in there, right? But like, I don't see anything about animation on there, and I thought this was an animation program. So this next line down is where that changes. You see where it says modeling? We're just in the modeling version of the menu. If we click this drop-down button, we can move to animation. And watch what happens to the menu when I do. Everything updates. So now it's a whole new menu, right? There are literally thousands of things in there. Thousands. And you are not going to memorize them all. The skill you need to learn is how do I find what I need, right? And that's just a process of thinking. You're like, oh, this is going to be animation related. I bet it's in the animation menu. It's about how the object deforms, so I bet it's in the deformer menu, right? And eventually you'll get in the habit of being like, oh, I bet Maya's keeping it in there. But that is one of the main questions you're going to start having pretty soon is, where is that at? Where can I find that tool, right? Maya, the people who design Maya recognize that there are some things you use more than others, right? There's some tools you use a lot. And those tools are in this next section down here. So you see all these tabs, curves and surfaces, poly modeling, sculpting. And then underneath those are a bunch of icons. So we're in poly modeling right now. And you'll see there's a bunch of icons. But if I go to sculpting, there's other icons. All of these things are things that we use a lot, right? So this isn't all of the modeling tools, but it's the most commonly used modeling. And so they keep them there so it's sort of a quick access. That's one of the things you'll start to learn about Maya, is that it gives you multiple ways of doing almost everything. As an example of this, just try this with me. Put your mouse in the middle of the screen, and then hold down your space bar. So this is called a marking menu. And this also has everything that is within our menu, okay? So we'll get to this again in a second, but just tap your spacebar kind of quickly. So now we have 4 viewports, right? And we'll talk about these in a minute, but you'll see that we have a perspective, a top, a front, and a side. We'll come back to those here in just a second, but if you mouse over one of those and tap spacebar again, it'll take you to that. We tap spacebar again, mouse back over perspective, tap it again, full screens it, okay? So I just wanted to show you the spacebar. If you hold it down, will give you all those menu options. If you tap it, it switches back and forth. That's not the only way to do either of those things. Like, there's plenty of other options. What Maya's tried to do is give you as many options as possible so you can work the way that you want to work. I know some people who never go to the menu. They always use that marking menu by holding down the spacebar. I know some people who never use that marking menu. I'm actually one of them. I very rarely use the marking menu to find a menu item. So everybody works differently, and you'll adapt to your workflow. There's not only one way of doing it. Right? Okay, so we're going to come back to that. So this, all of these icons along here, we call that the shelf. Okay. Now there's a couple of things to notice right above the shelf. A couple of other tiny icons. Those are just commonly used interface icons. Right? So like the little magnets are snap tools. So if you need an object to snap to another object, that's what those little magnets are for, right? And these little clapboards over here on the end, that's for rendering. And so when you want to see what this looks like with all the lighting and materials applied to it, we're going to hit one of those buttons. Don't sweat those just yet. We're going to get to them in a minute. The entire user interface is customizable. And we can see that on the workspace up here. If we go to Maya Classic, see where it says that? If we click that, there's a whole bunch of different ways that this interface can be organized. Like if I go down to animation, it gives me this, which is a bunch of different layouts for all of the interface. It's something you can also create your own custom version of that. But for right now, let's go ahead and go back to Maya Classic just so we're all looking at the same thing. So under Workspace, Maya Classic, there we are. Okay. Down here in the bottom, let's just jump from the top to the bottom. This is the animation section. Okay. Pretty much if you're going to be doing anything with animation, you're down here in this bottom section. We have our timeline. And you can see it's numbered 1 through, right now, 120. We can extend that all the way out to, I think, 10,000. It may actually even go past that. I know that you start having, this may not be true anymore. At one point, you used to start having issues after 10,000 frames. Now, what does that mean? What is a frame? Anybody?
It's just like one part of an animation that is like, or one motion again.
So one motion. Somebody have their hand up back here in the back.
It's like when you put multiple pictures that are essentially similar, but it's like slow moving, so each of them may be a little bit different, but if you put them together, you get like full motion.
Right, right. So we'll get into this very soon, but basically any animation you watch, any film you watch, if you go to the movies right now, what you're seeing is a series of images that flash at your face very quickly, right? They're all still images, right? But if we flash them at your face very quickly, it appears that the objects in those images are moving. Okay? They're not, right? You recognize that like you can't move stuff around on the screen at a theater. Right, it just appears that way. And so that's what this is this is broken up into those still images, right? And we'll talk about that a little bit more later, but it is important to remember that in animation, there's some magic numbers that are associated with that. So it's the number of still images that flash at you per second, okay? For every second of animation, in film, there are 24 images that flash at your face, okay? So 24 frames per second is how we refer to that. In film, in TV and a lot of video on the internet, is going to be closer to 30 frames a second, either 29.95 or 97 or 30, right? 29.97 is so close to 30, we usually just say 30, right? There is a difference, but, and so that's how fast those flash at your face. If you're playing video games, it's going to be 60. Right? And so that is important because this is where we can customize how quickly Maya is going to play those frames back for you when you're working inside of the viewport. And you can do some math down here too. If you need 2 seconds of animation at 24 frames per second, you need 48 frames, right? And so that's one of the ways this is sort of broken up. The line right below this line has this slider bar, and this is how you can adjust the range on that. We'll do that more specifically later. And we have over here in the corner, we see these little play bars right here. This is going to allow us to play through the animation. So don't sweat that too much right now. We're definitely going to go into that more in depth later. The bottom two lines here are actually really, one is really important to you right now. Right? It's the very bottom line, right? Right here, you'll see that mine right now says go to start of playback range, right? Why is it telling me to do that? Yours probably doesn't say that right now, does it? So watch what happens when I move my mouse around. When I put it over like this circle right here, or this sphere right here, the words on that change. It says polygon sphere, create a polygon sphere on the grid. Okay? That's your help line. That's actually not your help line, but that is the line that helps you, right? It's your info line, right? And so if you're curious what that tool does, mouse over it and read what happens down here. Okay, that will give you an indicator of what that is, right? The line right above it says MEL, M-E-L. That is a spot where we can do some scripting. We're not going to go into scripting too much in this class, but know that if you kind of have an affinity for some coding, there's some opportunities in Maya for that, right? Not everybody has to do that, but there are some things that you can do to build like specific tools within the software package, and that too is a job, right? That there's employment out there for people who can do that. The two programming languages inside of Maya are MEL, which is Maya Embedded Language. Maya is the only one that uses that language. And they also have Python. So if you've learned Python in another scripting class or programming class, or you just want to know Python for some other reason, you can use that inside of Maya to create your own tools and plugins and stuff like that. Okay, so last thing we're going to talk about in the interface is these two side regions. Okay, so we'll notice over here, this is kind of minimal. There's this arrow and these circles and stuff in this corner over here, right? Trying to mouse with my mouse instead of just point with my finger. Those are the move tools and the rotate tools. A lot of people will start to, like maybe you'll forget the shortcut key, and that's how you'll like go over there and it's like, I want to move this object. You select the move tool, right? There's a set of shortcut keys I'm going to teach you here in a minute that actually make that way easier, and I would encourage you to learn and kind of utilize those shortcut keys. It'll increase your speed as you go along. At first, though, if you can't remember the shortcut keys, that's where those are at. And then there's this thing here. I guess it's the right below it. These sections, and those sections are for different user interface setups, right? So not how we changed our entire workspace. It's how do we change just the viewport in the middle, just the big gray area in the middle, right? Now, all the way to screen right, there's this giant gray area out there. Like it's just this big empty space that's taking up room and not seeming to do anything, right? That area changes. That is where all of your information about whatever you have selected is going to show up. Okay? So let's just go ahead and make an object to select. Okay? So there's a couple of different ways we can do this. The easiest is if you're in the polygon modeling menu, just click this little sphere over here. Okay. Congratulations, you've made your first model. Give yourself a round of applause. Yeah. Not that hard, right? But I'm not joking, like you have modeled something now. You just modeled something that was very easy to model. Right? What we just created was a polygon model. Okay. What does the word polygon mean? Anybody? Huh? Multiple-sided, right? And so we're going to talk about this a little bit more in the future. But a polygon model means it's made up out of flat planes, right? Flat triangle planes. We will dig into that in more detail. There are multiple types of models you can create in Maya. There's polygons, There's NURBS. I mentioned that word before. NURBS. Stands for non-uniform rational Bezier splines. And then, yeah, don't worry about what any of that means just yet. We'll talk about them more later. There's lots of stuff we're going to get to later. There's also like subdivision surfaces and stuff like that. But for the vast majority of entertainment-based art, you're going to be using polygons. So the polygon models are, it's not that they're the best, it's that they're the easiest to work with, right? You can, like NURBS can be much more accurate, but if you're just going for aesthetic and not accuracy, polygons can be much faster, right? Much faster to make and much less impact on the computer if done right. So, so we made our first polygon object. It's right there in the center, and what I'd like you to try to do is like just go out here and just click your mouse and try to get in there closer to it. Like it doesn't seem like it's working. What you'll notice is if you click and drag in your viewport, it drags this little box, right? But that doesn't seem to do anything. However, if I drag this little box over my circle or my sphere, it's going to select it, right? By default, if you are in the selection tool or any of the move tools, just clicking and dragging with your regular mouse click, I guess it's your left mouse click, in the viewport. I'm really bad with my right and left, if you guys haven't noticed that. I do it with my right, like left or right. If you click and drag with your left mouse click, it's going to select the object, whether you're in the move tool or not, right? And so that marquee menu, that little drag box is how you're going to select stuff. I know I keep saying that, but I want you to kind of recognize that because learning how to creatively select stuff is actually a skill you're going to value in the coming months. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. Now, as it is right now, though, like I want to move it. If I click it, try to move it, it's not doing anything, right? And so this is where those move tools along the side here that I was telling you about will come in handy, right? So if I click with that object selected, if I click down here, it's the fourth one down. It's like a box with arrows on each side of it, right? If I click that, you'll see that I get these arrows around my object, okay? And that's how we can move that object around. Let's go ahead and try moving it. Let's grab if we just click in the center, you'll see there's a little bit of a yellow box right in the center. If I click that and move it, I'm moving it around. But you have to realize my screen is a 2D surface, and I'm trying to move it in 3D space, right? So I don't know if I'm moving it closer to me, further away, or up and down, right? Like that can be very confusing. Now, if I want to undo that move, how do I do that? Control Z. That is just, you're going to remember Control Z in all of the software packages. If you write a word you didn't mean to write in Word, Control Z will undo it. Right? If you don't like Control Z, you also have this undo and redo up here. I would encourage you though, like everybody's going to start to favor certain shortcut keys. Maya is a program that like some shortcut keys are just essential, right? So I was able to move it that way. I can also scale it and rotate it, scale it and rotate it. So if I click the rotate button, I get this little ring around it, right? And I can click that and rotate it. Actually, let me go back to my move tool. So the issue with being able to move it in one direction is kind of important because you may start moving an object around thinking you're doing one thing, and then you go look at it from a different angle and you'll be like, oh wait, I moved it incorrectly, right? So you'll see we have these arrows here. We have this blue arrow, a red arrow, and a green arrow. Those three colors may seem familiar. What are they? Red, green, blue. Anybody? What was it? Yeah, they are, but we've probably heard RGB somewhere else, right? So you probably recognize it from how you would mix color in like Photoshop, right? All colors, depending on if you're mixing it with light or if you're mixing it with ink, you're going to mix with either red, green, and blue, or you're going to do the CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. K is black. So RGB is in there for a reason. It's because it's easy to remember in that order, RGB. Right? A lot of artists have learned that already. And that is so we know which angle is what. Okay? So this color combination is going to be associated with X, Y, and Z. Okay? So X, Y, Z, RGB. What's X, Y, Z? What does that mean? Anybody recognize that from something?
Is that like dimensions, like in math?
So you may recognize it from, in math, you probably heard them, geometry, whatever, you heard them talk about the Cartesian coordinate system. You thought you had left the Cartesian coordinate system long behind, and here I go dredging that fella back up again. What was the Cartesian coordinate system? So it's actually, when you boil it down to it, we're not going to start plotting numbers or anything like that too much. When you boil it down to it, it's just a way of communicating length or location to someone, okay? So recognize that we all have to have like a language to communicate in, and this XYZ system is how we do that, right? So let's say I had a piece of string, right, that was infinitely long. It was so long, and I'm like, but I just need a piece of string that is 1 foot long, right? But I don't have any scissors. So, I'm sorry, what's your name?
Sam.
Sam? So I asked Sam, I said, hey Sam, would you take this string downstairs, because Radina has some scissors, I saw them earlier, and would you have her cut this string in a 1 foot length, like just 1 foot long, 12 inches, right? Sam has all the information she needs, right? 12, or 1, depending on which so let's go ahead and stay in inches, because it makes more sense. So, she can take that downstairs and say, Greg needs a 12-inch piece of string. And so you know where the beginning of that string is. You can measure 12 inches in a straight line and cut the exact right piece of string. Right? And I don't have to go down there and point to the point I want. I can communicate that with a single number, a single dimension. Okay? 12. So any single piece of any straight line can be divided up in that, as long as we know where the beginning of it is. Right? We can just have a single number and know what point on that line we're talking about. So if we add another dimension to that, we have like a piece of paper. Right? Conveniently, here's a giant flat thing that's already broken up into sections for me. I didn't plan this. This is completely impromptu, y'all. And so if I both of my hands are full right now, right? And I wanted someone to draw a dot on a very specific spot on this. I could tell them that spot with 2 numbers, right? I could say, go over, it's already divided up into units here, it looks like inches. And so you can see that here's the starting point, right? And there's 0, 0, 0. I could say, go over 10 inches and go up 7 inches. Right? And since this is already divided, they can go over 10, up 7. I can't reach it. It's right over here somewhere. So, 2 dimensions, they can find any point on this object. I just have to give someone 2 numbers, and they have to know the starting point, the origin point. So, the same can be said in 3D space, right? So, before I jump into that, if I'm measuring something in 1 dimension, it's not that hard. You can't get it confused with something else, right? If I'm measuring it in 2, you're like, which number goes first? Was I supposed to go up first and then over, or over first and then up? And the way we separate those is by giving it a letter, right? X and Y. So X would probably be like side to side, Y would be up and down, right? And so I could say your X is 10, your Y is 7, and everybody can find that same spot. Right? And it's, again, just a method in which we can communicate in a flat space. So the same can be said in 3D space, okay? I'm going to keep using Sam as an example because she has a cup sitting here. So we have back corner here, if that's our origin point, and I said, hey, would you go in there and grab Sam's cup for me? Sam may be like, this is my cup. And you would be like, where's it at? And I'd be like, well, if you start in that front corner of the room, you're going to go over about 12 feet, right, in X. You're going to go up about 3 feet in Y, and you're going to go this direction in Z about 7 feet, and that's where the cup is, right? Now, of course, we could get in here with a measuring tape and get the exact dimensions of that. But that's how we can communicate any location in 3D space, right? So this is very convenient for us because we are currently working in a 3D space. In fact, 3D is as far as we can wrap our little brains around, right? There is lots of scientific evidence that there are more dimensions that we just don't understand, and that potentially time is one of them. But that's when I start geeking out on science fiction, and you don't want that. You don't want that. So this is what this is associated with. X, Y, Z, R, G, B. So we can say, which one is X? It's R, right? So red is going to be X, Y is going to be green, and blue is going to be Z, right? And so you'll slowly start to associate those colors with those letters after using it over a while. Now I want to point out that when I selected this object, this menu over here to our right suddenly got full. You may have noticed that if I don't have it selected, there's nothing there, right? If I select it, it gives us a bunch of information about that object, including its translate X, Y, and Z, right? So if I were to just grab the red handle right here, you'll see that it highlights when I mouse over it, and move it, you'll see that that translate X number changes. You see that? Conversely, if I wanted to go in here and type a number in there, like if I wanted to type in -10, you got to turn on your number lock if your keys aren't working. -10, it will move it back to there. So we can type in numbers to get it to a very precise location, or we can move it around the screen with those arrows to get it in a aesthetically pleasing location a little faster, right? If accuracy is not 100% important at that point, then you can use your eyeball to kind of say, that's where I want it to be. You'll notice that there's one for translates, rotates, and scales. Across the screen, translate, rotate, and scale in the menu, right? So we got here, translates, rotates, scales, translate, rotate, scale. And usually you hear it in that order. Why in that order? Any idea? So, the reason for that actually probably is associated with the shortcut keys for it, right? One, that's also probably the order in which you will do it the most, right? You're probably going to move stuff more than you rotate. But our shortcut keys for this is very important. This is a very big time-saving element, okay? So you can use those buttons if you forget them, but they're pretty easy to remember because if you look at your keyboard, you remember when you were learning to type, right? It's that very first row of keys all the way at the top. So Q, W, E, and R, okay? So watch what happens when I hit this. Q takes, oh, sorry, I still have my field highlighted over there. So let's go ahead and over here. Q takes me to my selection tool, that little arrow at the top. W is move. E is rotate. R is scale. Okay? QWER. Actually, WER is probably what you're going to be using the most because you don't always have to just be in the selection tool to select stuff, right? I'm currently in the scale tool, but if I don't have that selected and I want to select it, I can still drag select it while I'm in the scale tool. Okay? In fact, usually the only reason I use Q is to hide this locator, like this, the scale or move option, right? So if I hit Q, it disappears and I can actually just see the model. So, WER, those are those, if you're going to memorize any shortcut keys, that is the ones I would advise. There is one more set, though, that you're probably going to want to memorize, and it's less of a shortcut key, and it's more of a navigation tool. Okay. So how many of you play like 3D video games where you have to run around, either third person, first person? Yeah. Right. That's awesome. I'm curious. What's some of the ones you like? Skyrim.
Metal Gear.
Huh?
Metal Gear.
Metal Gear. Breath of the Wild.
Assassin's Creed.
Anybody? I'm actually playing a game right now on the Switch called Rime. R-I-M-E. Anybody play that? Oh, that's so fun. Like it's not real. It's like almost more like an experience. It's a lot
It's
of fun.
like Journey, right?
Yeah, kind of like Journey. It's actually got a neat little like. You don't know exactly what the story is, but it's a very like moving, like touching thing. Like you're like, I don't understand what that is, but that like is impactful. I don't know. I think I'll understand it by the time I beat it. I'm close, but I have to do this whole teaching a class thing. So, oh yeah, Mario. So in that you have to use certain buttons to navigate around, right? And in most cases, you use like the WASD is how you would navigate around. Unfortunately, we've already got the W key occupied with stuff, and the S key is important too. We'll talk about it later. And most people, like when you're running around with a character, you really just need to go forward and back, and side to side, and then be able to jump, right? We need to have a little bit more navigation control. Okay, this is going to be. I'll be honest with you. This is the part that you'll probably fight with the most in these first few days, and it's because like it's like learning to play the piano. Does anybody know how to play the piano? Guitar? Okay. So it's like you're asking two hands to do two different things, and it just takes some time to get used to it, right? So they tried to simplify it as much as they can. It's the Alt key. So before I do anything, I'm going to go ahead and put that back to where it was. Just undo it a few times. Undo it one more time. So if we hold down the Alt key, right, and click anywhere, just use our regular left click anywhere in our viewport, it's going to let us tumble around this object. So Alt left click lets us tumble. A lot of people use the word orbit. It is kind of that. Your camera, so what we're looking through here is a literal 3D camera. Right? There is a camera in our scene. We can actually make multiple cameras and hop in and out of different ones. Right now, this is our default perspective camera. So what we're doing when we're doing this is we're not rotating the object, we're rotating our camera. And our camera is aimed at something. It's aimed at that ball right now. So sometimes you may get to a point to where you're aimed at something else and you want to tumble around that ball. If you want to change what you're aimed at, select that object and hit F. Right? So I'm just going to do this really quick to mess mine up. Don't worry about what I'm doing just yet. Like if I'm here and I'm trying to tumble, I'm like, wait, that's not what I wanted. I wanted to be tumbling around that ball. I just have to select the ball and hit F. And F will focus us in on that, okay? A will actually focus us on the entire scene, if you wanted to do that as well. Right now, our entire scene is just that ball. So A and F will like sort of quickly snap your camera to that object. So, Alt left click lets you tumble around. Okay. What about Alt right click? What does that do? Try that one. So what would you call this? Zoom in and out. And that's the phrase I use too. Technically it's incorrect, but it's fine to refer to it that way. Because we're not actually zooming. Like if you think of a camera, when you're zooming, what you're doing is you're staying in place and you're twisting a lens to make it like magnify it, right? You're like using like you're telescoping in and out, right? When you're zooming. What's actually happening right now is we're moving our camera. Okay, it's not that I'm standing in one place and the camera is zooming in and out. I'm moving my camera closer or moving my camera further away. The reason that's important is because you also have the option to zoom in and out inside of your camera. Actually, the camera that we are looking through right now has many of the same settings that we can adjust that an actual camera has. We can do exposures, we can do focal lengths, we can set this thing up to be a fisheye like camera, like really wide or really like narrow focal length. So if you know anything about photography, we have control of that. And once you start working with visual effects and you learn how to physically use a camera, manually use a camera, you can bring some of that information here and be like, oh, I know how to frame this shot better because I can use a combination of the camera's location and the lens, right? So don't sweat that too much, but just recognize that what that's actually called is it dollying? Yeah, we're dollying in and out, right? So the last one is Alt middle click. And so you may be saying, Greg, I don't have a middle button, right? And you probably have already noticed that if you scroll that middle mouse wheel, it pretty much dollies you in and out again, right? What some people don't realize is that if you push down on that mouse wheel, you'll feel it click. Feel that? Maya was, like you can just kind of push down on it. Hopefully it doesn't roll too much and it'll click, right? So if you hold Alt and you push down on that middle mouse button, it will do this. I would say this is the one that people sort of fight with the most because they're not used to pushing down on that mouse wheel. I've told you a lot of things here that you're actually going to fight with. This navigation part is very, like, it's not second nature yet, right? Like, you don't know how to navigate around there the same way you know how to walk, right? But just like we all like learn to walk, or I think another example is like driving a car or riding a bicycle, right? Like that was really hard the first time you did it. But how many of you were like, when you drove in this morning, were thinking about all the details? Be like, wait, here comes a curve. I got to turn the wheel this way. Like it's not like that anymore, right? It becomes something that you just kind of naturally do. The only way to get to that point is to struggle through it now. Right? So what's going to happen is throughout the next few weeks, you're going to be doing stuff in Maya, and you're going to be like, that's way over there. I could zoom it, or I could dolly in there and tumble around it where I can see it better, or I could just try to move it from here and hope I get it right, right? And you're going to get it wrong, and it's going to cause more problems down the future. Whenever that's the case, challenge yourself to move your camera over there and get it in the right position, okay? So, so we can try that now, right? Let's say I wanted to be on the other side of this object, right? So I'm right here now. I want to be on the other side of it, and I want it to be over on this side of my screen, okay? So how I can do that is I can hold Alt and then left click to tumble around, and then Alt and middle click to pull it over to here, okay? This navigation is, and if I want to be even closer to it, Alt right click, right? So these are challenges that I really want you to try because you're going to have to eventually anyway. Like there's no getting around navigating inside of Maya, and the only real way of doing that is when it becomes second nature. I realized the first time I taught this class, I had to look at the buttons to remember what I was doing because I don't even think about it anymore. I just sat down and I just start doing stuff, right? Like navigating around in there is not something I have to think about anymore. I promise that you'll get to that point too. You kind of have to get through these hurdles first before you do, okay? Okay. So let's try moving and navigating around some objects, okay? So I'll just sit down here. I didn't actually do all of the move and rotate scale tools and stuff. So I'm going to, I'll drag over here and middle click, right? I'm going to hit W. I can move this up a little bit. Okay. I'm going to hit R. What does R do? Scale, right? So if I hit R, I can either scale this from the middle, that little blue box there. I can scale it from there to make it the entire thing bigger, or I can scale from a single axis. So I'm going to make it a little taller. I could make it skinnier in one axis, or I could make it skinnier in multiple axes. So I could grab this little X here and flatten it out, make it a surfboard. Or I could grab this little box right here. You see how it kind of makes a plane there? I could grab that little box and just scale on those two axes and make more of like a missile or something, right? And then I can hit E and I can rotate this, right? And rotate it like this. Again, I can move it. Now, if I need a second model, I can hit Control D and duplicate it. And now I have another one. Or, and that D is for duplicate, so Control and D. We'll mention that one again later. Or if I needed a completely new one, I could go up here, create a box. And so now we're starting to get a little bit of a scene here, right? Maybe it doesn't make sense, it's a little abstract, but we have a little bit of a scene. Whew, whose brain is full? Everybody's brain full? My brain's full, but it's because I'm so smart. So this is actually a good time for a little bit of a breather, and thankfully the breather walked through the door. Yay! Say hi to Catherine, everybody. She's here to do a puppet show. Not really. Wouldn't that be awesome? You should totally bring a puppet next time. So I knew Catherine was coming by. I'm going to give her just a minute to introduce herself and tell you why she's here. So just give her a minute of your time, kind of pay attention. Come on up, Catherine. Yay, Catherine! Yeah.
Hi guys, I'm Catherine Ross, and I am the president of Edge Club. For those of you who don't know what Edge Club is the professional development and social club for all digital media students. We're having a kickoff tonight at 5 p.m. There will be free ice cream, and I'd like to see you there, mostly because you can meet new people, you can meet your classmates, you can meet professors, and afterwards we're having a tour of the DMC. And I know it's a really small building, but there's actually a lot of stuff that you need to know about that I didn't know about for like 3 years when I first came here. So that's that. Are there any questions about the event tonight or Edge Club? Yeah.
Where can we find out more about it? I have a live class tonight.
Yeah. We have a Facebook page. Tonight I'll be giving a talk on like membership and all the events we have planned this year. And then, if you get in touch with me on Discord, I can send you the Discord link. That has like the chat and stuff.
Actually, if you want to send me like a write-up of some information or something like that, I could also post that on D2L for you.
Okay.
I'm actually the academic advisor for Edge Club, or faculty advisor for Edge Club, which means I'm relatively familiar with it. I don't always have all the links and stuff like that, but I can strongly encourage you to do this. I think it's a great way of making friends, but I think also it's a great way of meeting people who have already gone through this, who can like unofficially mentor you, right? Like Catherine is a great animator. She also you do a reasonable amount of modeling and stuff like that as well.
Oh no, I'm a terrible modeler.
Terrible modeler. Don't ask her for modeling advice. But yeah, a great animator, actually good at 2D animation as well. So, and all of that is stuff that, she may have answers or just general advice, like don't put off that project to the last minute type of advice. I will chime in a couple of things that we have been working on is getting some guest speakers. We're out here in the middle of Tennessee where it's not full of animation studios or game studios. So we contact people from the industry and set up Skype chats with them. So it would be a big room. Do you know which room it would be in? Probably two.
Probably this one.
This one. That makes sense. And so up here on the screen, they'll be Skyping with the people that we contact. I got another confirmation, so I'm still waiting on 2 more. Right now, the 3 people who have confirmed, although we don't have the dates set up, is Michelle Maynard. She is a game designer for Oxide Games in Baltimore. Patrick Hagar, I think it's Hagar, who is a, what is it? he's an environment artist for Infinity Ward. So it's a game studio out in California. I can't remember what I think they made some of the Call of Duty games, but they make a handful of other things too. And then Matt Drury, a recent graduate from here, who's an animator on Ruby for Rooster Teeth. And that always makes people look up. Like that one's one. So all three of those people. We also have a couple of people I've asked. I haven't heard back from them yet, but I have a feeling probably both of them will say yeah. One of them was an animation intern on Adventure Time who graduated from here, and the other guy is an animator from not ZeniMax, Bethesda, and he worked on Dogmeat for Fallout 4. He was one of the animators for Dogmeat, so I worked with him at Firaxis. So come out for that, because I think that, obviously it's open to everybody, but Edge will get a lot of little perks from being the group that organizes that, including contacts. Anything else you would add? Any other questions that you have about Edge or any of this?
You said it was here at
Yes.
5?
Yeah, it's in the lobby downstairs. You'll see this.
And if you missed that part, ice cream. There will be ice cream.
That's not the same.
I'm just curious, like, what would a regular club meeting be like?
That's the thing about Edge. We do a lot of like diverse stuff. If you're interested, I can tell you some of the things I have planned for this semester. At the meeting, we will be talking about if people have any ideas for meetings. But we've done things where we've done a whiteboard draw-off with Marty Henley. That's where you get together and compete on who can draw the weirdest thing. There are prizes for that. We've also done a monster clay workshop, which is actually really cool. You make a little monster around Halloween with Marty Henley, who is like a professional level sculptor. So that's really fun. Something that I'm working on right now is doing like a monthly competition, and there's something really small. It's not really going to get in the way of your homework, but right now we're thinking about doing a flip book competition. So like a little animation. It's going to have parameters, and we'll go over that next Thursday. These are things where if you win, you can put it in your resume. Like, that's something that's kind of cool, and you won. And there are prizes for that. Something else?
I know that we've talked about a handful of other things, but strangely, like all the stuff that we've already talked about is going to fill up this semester a lot faster than you think. One of the things I did chat with, I haven't spoke about this, but we'll talk about it now.
Yeah.
We have a student who just came back from an internship at NASA. Amanda Kaleni worked with NASA in their training program, where they use Unreal and Maya, the software you would be learning here in the game design concentrations, to make training modules for astronauts. And she went there for an internship over the spring semester. They liked her so much they asked her to stay throughout the summer. And I know that she has some interesting stuff to talk about from there.
Yeah.
I thought that could be like an unofficial chat some night, or an official one if you wanted to make it one of the actual talks. So, and she's somebody that you'll be sitting like next to in class. Like, you may not know it, but she's super good at what she does. So I thought that would be an interesting one as well. If you have ideas of things you would like Edge Club to do, the way you do that is get involved with Edge Club and eventually work your way up to being Catherine's the president. That is something that goes on a resume as well. You'll be surprised at how hard it is to fill up your resume when it comes time to graduate. And so these are good things to have on there.
Any more questions? I think you had a question. I thought someone was here.
How long is the meeting?
Tonight, it's just an hour. Really, I'm just going to spend about 15 minutes talking. I'm going to pass around a form where you can put down ideas for events and stuff and get your information, and then people are just going to talk. And then at 6, when the meeting's kind of over, I'm going to do the tour, so about 15 minutes on the tour. Yeah.
Can you still be a member if you can't make the meetings, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You can even come to the meetings if you're not a member. The only thing is, if you're a member, you pay a fee, and that means that all the events are free, and it adds up because we're going to have a lot of events this semester, and if you're a member, it's free.
How much is that fee?
It is. I looked this up.
Okay.
It is $7 for a semester and $10 for the year. So honestly, just hand a tenner in and it's a little easier. But that's not due like for a while. As a matter of fact, I'm not even going to put a due date on it. It makes more sense to get it in early because we're already working on stuff where you get free access to things you would otherwise have to pay for to participate. Yeah.
Is there a list from last year? I don't remember. Last semester. I don't remember if I had time.
Oh, I don't know. I would have to contact the president from last semester. I think you would have only paid for the semester in
If
spring.
you were in spring, yeah, that makes sense. 'Cause I don't know though. That
I'll
would
ask
pay
her.
it.
I'll ask her.
But I think if you pay 10, it makes sense to
Yeah,
prorate it or
and
whatever.
it would.
Yeah. Other questions? This is if you're looking for ways of getting involved. This is a good one. I was in Edge Club when I was a student here.
You have to be an ETSU student. You can still come to the ice cream social if you're interested. But you have to be an ETSU student to participate in the events.
Other questions? Catherine, I think I should probably legally tell you you're also being recorded because I record this class. So wave at the
I have a
camera.
problem with that.
Yeah, exactly. I just realized that, but that will be in the video too, so you can always like remember the notes she said. Basically, it's easy though. Come back tonight at 5 o'clock and eat some ice cream. Get involved. Don't. I remember when I was a student, I was very nervous about Edge. I was like, but if I show up and they ask me how to model something in Maya, I'm not going to know the answer, so I should stay home. No,
There's
nobody's-
no quiz.
This is only going to help you. Like this is not be anything that's going to embarrass you.
How often do you say you don't meet?
We're gonna meet weekly, and the actual meetings are gonna be on Thursdays at 8 p.m. But tomorrow or tonight, it's an exception because we wanted to have as many people come out as possible and have some ice cream.
And y'all meet in this building?
Yes.
So if you're interested in joining, but you happen to work every night that you have a meeting, what do you do then?
You can come. You can still come to the events if you don't like. I'm gonna have events that are not on Thursdays, and those will be up. Look on the posters in the wall. I will put posters up, and it will be on Facebook. You will know when it happens. We are also going to be discussing tonight the possibility of changing the meeting time for people. That's a very low chance, but I am going to talk to some people about it to make sure that we've got the meeting that works for everyone.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments?
Will you still be doing like board games?
With the board game night, yes, we're gonna do another board game night tonight or this semester. And as well, there's also gaming communities, and they're gonna do stuff as well with Edge Club.
Yeah, actually, that's something. Who did you ever find out who's the president?
We did, yeah. We talked. It's Timmy, Tyler.
Okay.
I don't know his face, but
All right, cool. So that's another club to get involved with gaming communities. And it's not specifically a digital media club, but digital media is often very involved with it. And I think they kind of got it started, which is basically if you like playing video games competitively or just for fun, get involved with them, and they can. You know, that's what they do. That's their events. It's gaming stuff. Okay. Last chance to ask Catherine questions. All right, cool. Let's give her a hand. Thank you. Okay, back to this boring old animation stuff. No, actually, we're pretty close to done on what I wanted to cover today. You know how to move around the scene, right? How do we tumble? What is the shortcut keys for that?
Alt left click.
Alt left click. What does Alt middle click do? Yeah, so it pans the camera, it moves your camera from side to side. I do think it's technically called pan. Alt right click, zoom or dolly. Okay, what if I wanted to rotate an object?
R left. E.
R. Or yeah, E. So W-E-R. R would sound like rotate, but R is actually scale. I know, they had to go like throw that at you, right? So it's the middle one is E. So yeah, good point. Kind of threw me off for a second there. What if I wanted to move something? W and scale. Kind of gave that one away earlier. That one's R, right? So I want to talk very briefly about this tapping the spacebar thing. Like, if you just mouse over and you tap the spacebar, this may seem a little confusing at first, right? The way we see the world, what we have is 4 cameras here. We have the perspective camera up here in your top right, right? And we have a top camera, a front camera, and a side camera. Okay. Those others, this perspective camera, we call it perspective because things get smaller in the distance, right? That's what we're talking about. Like when you learn to draw perspective, it's to learn to draw how things foreshorten as they get further away from you, right? And so to show you that, if I were to go over here in my perspective camera and move this object really far away and tumble over here, even though it is actually the same size as the other elongated sphere, right, it's further away so it looks smaller, right? That did not happen in our front view, right? I moved it further away, but it's still the same size, okay? This view is called an orthographic view. It means there's no foreshortening in it, and it's how a lot of engineering programs and engineering design programs use to give someone schematics, to give someone specifics about something, right? So if you're modeling something and you want to be very precise about it, you may need to use one of these other views to make sure you're staying perfectly straight, or whatever, you didn't get it all warped or whatever. If you ever looked at blueprints for like a house or something, those are usually drawn in orthographic front side, maybe top views, maybe even more views. There's a back view and stuff like that. These are for your help, right? If you decided you wanted to line stuff up pretty accurately side to side, you could, actually this one is a little bit bigger. We could use it to make sure that, like, just to eyeball it, that we're both close to this same height. Right? Move those up. Right? Now, we'll show you too a quick selection thing. If I drag select, like let's say I wanted to grab just this object and just this box. If I drag select like this, I can select them both, right? And now I can move them both. However, if I rotate them both, I'm going to rotate like that. That may not be what you want, right? If I wanted to grab both of these objects, I can drag select like this. Occasionally, you need to select objects that you can't drag select. And so for that, you're going to use Shift. Okay, Shift is a toggle select. So if I click here and select that, and I hold Shift, I can add that to my selection when I click it, right? But if I keep holding Shift and I click it again, well, click it again, it deselects it, right? It's toggle selecting it, okay? And so this is a way that you can select multiple objects or deselect multiple objects. There's some other ways that we can unselect stuff or only select stuff instead of select deselect. But recognize that there's some tricks you'll learn throughout your time here in which that gets easier or becomes a tool that you will leverage. All right. I think that's all I'm going to teach you today. But I'm going to give you a small assignment. Okay? It actually, you actually are going to have too much time to do this one because of the way the semester works out this semester. And I may already be up there. I'm hoping it is, that way I don't have to put it up there. So if we go to //ETSUE3, we can either type that into any browser window, or we could type that into our little search bar down here, Katana or whatever our name is. It's going to take us up to that network drive we looked at the first day, right? DIGM classes. You're going to see the Greg folder, and then POA, that's us, And under resources, yeah, I've already put that in there. There's a folder there called Bridge. Okay? I want you to go ahead and copy that Bridge folder to your hard drive. Okay? If you brought a hard drive with you today, that's awesome. If you forgot, oops, it's okay. There's still a way to get this. You can upload this to Google Drive, or you can copy it to your student folder later and come back and work on it here. Yes?
How did you link that?
Okay, I'll show you one more time. So we can start down here if we wanted to, and just go //. That's the one that is over the enter key. There's two different slashes. This is the one that's right above the enter key. ETSU, right, the school. E, I have no idea why. And then 3. So ETSU E3. When we hit that, it pops this up. And so all of your classes are likely going to be under this DIGM classes folder. And then I'm Greg. And then POA is Principles of Animation. And then Resources is where that file is. And you're just going to need the entire Bridge file. Okay? So let's look at this really quick. I'm going to do something that's a bad habit. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to go ahead and, I shouldn't have closed that though. It's going to close Maya. Is it? There it goes. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a new Maya. I didn't really mean to close it. I'm going to copy this Bridge folder to my hard drive. For me, I can, that's not where I wanted it. So I'm going to copy this for me, I can copy it to my desktop. You'll want to put it on your hard drive, or later you can put it on the student folder under share. You can also probably just upload this entire folder to Google Drive if you want to do that and download it somewhere later. But in here, you're going to see a whole bunch of different folders, right? This is the Maya default project set folder structure, okay? Don't worry too much about how I got all those folders. I'll show you that later. The biggest thing is that Maya needs to recognize we're going to be working out of this folder, okay? So that means wherever you have this, you have to tell Maya before you open anything, this is where I'm going to be working, okay? And so the way we do that is with Maya open, I'm going to go to File, right here, Set Project. Okay? And this is how you should always open your Maya files. Set Project, it's like, what project? It's under Desktop. Mine was on Bridge. Yours maybe is on your hard drive, so you'll have to navigate to where that's at. And hit, like, all I have to do is select the Bridge folder and hit Set. Okay? And that did it. And that means now when I go to File, Open Scene, Maya knows where to look for the Maya project, okay? And it's going to find Bridge Deconstructed. Okay? So it's Bridge Deconstructed.mb. It's under the Scenes folder, okay? So you'll see that in our Bridge folder here, there's Scenes, Bridge Deconstructed, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and hit Open. And it gave me this. This is a bridge. I deconstructed it. I want you to reconstruct it. I will show you some examples here in a second, and we'll get the official write-up for it. But the way this should look, again, we have a whole bunch of different objects in here, right? And I've scattered them to the wind, right? If we go, instead of under the Scenes folder, if we go to Images or Movies, you'll see examples of what this should look like. Right? Open this folder. So this is from below. Right, you'll start to see multiple rendered images of how you're going to put this together. That screen's a little dark right now, but you can probably see it a little bit better on yours. You'll also find in the Movies folder a bunch of images. Unfortunately, other people have been rendering to this as well. And so you're going to see some stuff that's got extra things in it, like a car driving across it. Don't worry about that just yet. Nobody wants to play anything in iTunes ever. So this is another example of what that bridge is going to look like. I'm going to right-click open this with Windows Media Player. There we go. So you can see what it's going to look like. How do I actually like VLC better, but I don't see it on there. Windows Media Player, always use this app. There we go. So you get some ideas of what this is supposed to look like. And here's a little bit of a moving video of it, of what it's supposed to look like. All right. So all I want from you is to take these pieces and try to arrange them to where they look similar to this bridge, right? Try to get as close as you can. I'm not going to nitpick this too much. I just want you to get kind of close on it, right? Does it have like sort of the beams in the right spot? And that's one of the reasons I give you these videos is so you can look at them and be like, where are those beams at? Where is that supposed to be, right? There's a couple of little tricks I've done in here that are kind of tricky. But something to consider is that these are evenly spaced. One of the ways you can do that is in your channel box by using the same distance apart between each of them, right? I am not going to be super harsh on accuracy on here. I would rather it look like it's right than be actually measurably right. So just make it look good, right? Even if you decide you want to do a little extra and add some new pieces or whatever, that's cool. That's actually part of what we're going to do a little bit later. But just put this together, and to make sure that you don't sweat too much the small stuff, that really this point of this exercise is practicing moving around and moving objects around inside of Maya. This is an exercise, and all of the exercises are pass-fail, right? So if you turn in something that looks pretty close to this bridge or relatively close to this bridge, full credit, right? Just check, right? That's actually how I do all exercises, because you should feel comfortable to experiment, right? You shouldn't feel fear that you're going to mess up, right? Actually, messing up is how you're going to learn things. If you mess up, reopen the file and start again, right? The worst thing that can happen is you have to back up and do it again, right? So once you're done, once you've replaced all of these where they're supposed to be, you're going to go File, Save Scene As, and just save this as a new file. You can actually just take the word D or the DE off the front, right? Bridge constructed, right? And what you're going to turn in is that Maya file, that bridge constructed, okay? Yeah, and frankly, how I'm going to grade it is I'm going to open up each of them, and if the bridge is put back together, check, you got full points, right? I will say that probably the biggest issue that most people have with this is that they don't set their project, and then they save their file, and they don't pay attention to where Maya saved their file, and they lose it, right? If you don't set your project, it's probably going to save it somewhere in your documents folder. There's a default Maya project in there, but it is a pain in the butt to go try to find that thing. So the best way to do this is before you open this file, you go to File, Set Project, and you point to that bridge folder wherever it is. Now, I'm going to harp on this a lot throughout the semester. The reason we do that is later, there are going to be other files that are associated with your Maya file. You're going to have JPEGs that are brick textures that you've used to apply to the pillars on the bridge. Maybe it's like London Bridge, it's got all these bricks and like concrete on it. And you have to pull those textures in as images, right? And you may pull those images in and like leave them on your desktop computer at home, and then you bring the Maya file here and you open it up and Maya goes, where's that brick texture? And you're like, it's at home on my computer, Maya, and Maya's not going to go get it, right? Like you have to bring it with you. That's what that project is for, is not only is it keeping all of it together, it's keeping the path to those files together, right? Mine knows that as long as I'm underneath the bridge folder, it's in the textures folder. I know where to find it, right? As long as you set your project to the bridge folder, it knows that it's inside of textures, or probably source images. But okay, questions, comments? I'm sure you actually probably have a lot of questions, but they're probably not formed yet, right? You're probably like, I'm not even for sure how to start. I'm not sure where to get with this. As I said, luckily, this is a good time to be assigning this, and this is a good time to be confused, because this is the last day we're going to meet as a lecture this week. Friday is the lab time, right? So I'll be here. You come on in. We'll sit down and I can help you work through it. However, if you're wanting to work on this somewhere else, you feel confident that you can do this, I'm not taking attendance that day, so you don't have to be here. That is the time to ask me questions, though, not at 4 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, right? That is usually when I get the emails. The other thing you probably already know, but I'll remind you, it's Labor Day on Friday or on Monday, so we don't have class. So the next time we meet is a week from today. So you have almost a week to put this together. Please don't wait to the last minute. What I would encourage you to do, work on this tonight. If you have a little bit of extra time, work on this tonight, come back here and work on it after the Edge meeting or whatever. We have tutoring in this lab, or I think it's in this lab. A couple of different students are like it is their job. They sit in here. They usually wear like a green vest, so you can tell it looks like they're here going to build something or whatever. So you know who they are. I think it's David and Brianna, I believe, are going to be doing it. And they've gone through all this. They are excellent at this stuff, and they can help you work through any of the challenges you have as well. Also, I'm going to upload this video in just a minute, so you'll have that as well. And I'll be here on Friday to help you out with it. So yeah, yes.
It should be an obvious answer, but we can scale them and not use all the pieces, right?
You can, but you shouldn't have to. I think you should be able to put this entire bridge together just by translates and rotates.
Okay, it looks like there's a lot of extra pieces.
It does look like there's some extra pieces. There shouldn't be. There may be, but it should be all the right number of pieces.
Okay.
Yes.
Which one is in the bridge?
I'm sorry, what?
Which one is in the bridge?
It's under scenes, and it's bridge deconstructed.
You see my swatches and edits. You people with scenes.
Oh, this is set right here. So just create set. So if you set your project, then you go file open, and it should be. Actually, I'll show you that. If you have, are you planning on working here later or working? What I'll probably say is just when you come back and work on it, just bring a flash drive in. I'll show you really quick. If you didn't have a flash drive with you, you can temporarily. I mean, you can work there as much as you want, but I wouldn't leave it there forever. Up in the ETSU E3 server where we have DIGM classes, you can just copy that folder over to DIGM students share, and you can create your own folder in here. Just name it whatever you want to. Most people usually put their name on it, and it'll be in there. Last minute questions. We've got about 5 minutes left. Yes.
I got one regarding some of the images. On some, it has the little pillar things right underneath the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's that, and then the thinner panels that go under them.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them they're separate. There's a gap, and then on others it looks like they're inside each other.
So let me.
Does it really matter which one we do?
So there should be it should be the thicker road, the little box as a spacer, and then the thinner piece underneath
Go
it.
over 2 images. Yeah, that one.
That one?
I think it's
I think that what's happening is that the shadow is covering it up. It looks like that bar is not there, but it should be the same one. I think you ordered it off the same. Again, like I'm not going to nitpick it if you do it slightly differently. Last minute questions? Yes.
I'm sorry, but how did you say this again on hard drive?
It's under File and then Save. So if you've set your project, we just go File, Save. I usually do Save Scene As, so it doesn't copy over it. And then you can just type in a new name here. I usually just would say take away the DE and then just hit Save As. Does that work? Make sure to, like, just in case, make sure this path right here is where you think it is. Because sometimes people save it and forget to look there, forget to set the project, and it puts it somewhere and they have a hard time finding it. I can usually tell you some places it might be, but that'll be easier. So, all right. We cool? I'll be here Friday if you have any questions. Again, Monday is Labor Day, so you can probably still get into the building and you can probably use the building, but I'll be home sleeping. So I won't be here to answer the questions more than likely on Labor Day. I will not be laboring. Okay, cool. Have a great class, y'all. Or great day. Hopefully it's less eventful than Monday. So that was kind of a crazy day. That's not common, by the way. Okay, stop this.